Okay, hello everybody. Hello. My name is Ann Good and I'm the Assistant Curator of the James Fort Bell Library. On behalf of the First Fridays Committee and the Archives and Special Collections Department, I'd like to welcome you all to First Fridays. Welcome to all of you who braved the snow and came today, and also welcome to our online audience. This season's theme is Sensory Experiences in the Archives. Join us for the 2025-26 season of First Fridays as we explore things you can see, hear, touch, taste, or smell in archives and special collections. Today's presentation will be posted later on the University of Minnesota Library's YouTube channel. So our First Fridays is a monthly series of presentations made possible by a generous gift from Governor Elmer L. Andersen and Mrs. Eleanor Andersen in honor of former library director, Dr. Edward B. Stanford. The presentations are based on materials in the University Library's Archives and Special Collections. A special thank you to the interpreters for Middle English, Alan and April, who will be providing ASL interpretation for today's presentation. If time allows, we'll have Q&A at the end of both presentations. If the Zoom members have any questions for our speakers today, we ask that you please submit them in the Q&A and not in the chat so that we can keep track of your questions. And the in-person audience, please hold your questions until the end. There will be a tour after the presentation done by Kate Dietrich. Kate is right there in the back. So let's pause for a land acknowledgement. The University of Minnesota Twin Cities is built within the traditional homelands of the Dakota people. It is important to acknowledge the peoples on whose land we live, learn, and work as we seek to improve and strengthen our relations with tribal nations. We also acknowledge that words are not enough. We must ensure that our institution provides support, resources, and programs that increase access to all aspects of higher education for American Indian students, staff, faculty, and community members. Our presentations today feature the University Archives and the Social Welfare History Archives. So our first presentation is called Making Music Together, Community Music Collections in the Social Welfare History Archives. This will be presented by Linnea Andersen, who is the archivist for the Social Welfare History Archives. From the first notes of children's music classes and recitals to the sweeping sounds of orchestral, choral, and opera performances, there's a long history of music in community centers across the US. Hear how community music schools and neighborhood organizations were a space for musical expression, education, and experimentation. See photographs, sheet music, programs, and scrapbooks from the Social Welfare History Archives that document this vibrant world of community-created sounds. Linnea. Thanks, Toby.
Okay. So community centers, historically called settlement houses or neighborhood houses, were sites for the arts as well as for social services and educational programs. And these community hubs were often located in underserved, immigrant, or working class areas. and their musical and other arts programs were used to build social bonds in a diverse community, improve lives, and foster community development, in addition to providing accessible arts experiences and education. So my presentation explores ways that music was used and taught in community centers through social music in clubs and public events, as well as more formal music departments and schools. I will touch also on a few of the principal themes that I found in the collections while researching this talk. So records in SWHA from the Henry Street Settlement Music School, the National Guild of Community Music Schools, and the many collections related to community centers around the US document a rich variety of classes, performances, and other events, as well as the ideas and methods that informed community music. I'm focusing on the 19-teens and 20s through the 1960s, because when you're going down the archival rabbit hole, you really do have to stop somewhere. But there are both earlier and more recent materials related to community music in the collections. Let's start with two slides about events that or kinds of events that I feel bracket the really wide range of musical experiences created in these community centers. So in the first one, we see the 1937 Henry Street Music School world premiere performance of The Second Hurricane by Aaron Copland. An opera for youth that was written for the school. The story centers on high school students who become trapped on an island while working to rescue the victims of a hurricane. And performers included the school's adult and children's choruses, whom you can see on the bleachers on the side, as well as members of its orchestra, and students from a local high school and the school for professional children in the leading roles. Music school staff conducted the choruses, and none other than Orson Welles was the stage director. And I've still not been able to figure out how they got a hold of Orson Welles, but the performance was also broadcast on the radio, and it netted over $2,000, which is about $40,000 now, in ticket sales as a benefit for the school, as well as positive reviews. And this slide shows examples of homemade flyers, which are always actually a favorite of mine in the archives, announcing musical opportunities and events for community members, including classes, choruses, and social gatherings. And in the Parents Association Square Dance invitation, there's just a little hard to see, but there's wonderful children's illustrations of people playing the drums and apparently some kind of giant saxophone. So it's just really a lot of fun. They have a lot of character. So these two types of events, like world premiere and square dancing and community events, from all appearances at either ends of a musical spectrum, were both informed by the same ideas about the importance of culture and the role of music in the community and in people's lives. Community music in settlement houses is almost as old as the U.S. settlement house movement itself. The first school was established at Hull House in Chicago in 1892-93, and others soon followed around the turn of the century, with at least 10 settlement-affiliated music schools in operation by 1915. In 1922, the National Federation of Settlements formed a music division to guide programs in member agencies, and in 1926, the Federation got Carnegie Foundation funds of $25,000, which is about $450,000 now, to set up an experimental social music training course for settlement music directors at the New York School of Social Work. The course bulletin defined community music as any use of music in which the stress is not merely upon the music itself, but upon the lives of those participating. So another document used in the program, titled Music and Social Work, yes, of course, states that music is a valuable tool for the social worker. And the document even aligns the role of music to comfort and inspire with the role of social workers to do the same. So one of the exam questions for course 32, Social Music from 1930, asks students, imagine a settlement in a slum district. Poles, Irish, Italians, and Swedes that has no music program. What argument in favor of introducing music would you use on A, the board, be the head worker. Granted no cooperation from the head worker except the offer of a room and a poor piano, how would you inaugurate a social music program? And the question suggests that music directors had to navigate the interests and needs of various communities, administrative structures within their own organization, and varying amounts of resources while developing musical programs to entertain and further the mission. And regardless of these challenges, the records show that music was a popular and common activity in community centers. In 1930, a study of music in 38 settlements in New York City found 3,400 music students, including over 500 in choruses and over 300 in orchestras, and noted that there were 44 different orchestras or other ensembles operating in community centers in the city. And in addition to the growth of social music, community music schools continued to expand during the 1920s and 30s. And as of January 1935, there were around 20 schools and 50 individual music departments operating in community centers around the US that were part of the National Federation's network. These schools felt a mission to provide accessible and affordable musical education and to put the benefits of music within reach of underserved communities as a means to uplift, which is the phrase they used, children and adults, often regardless of their level of talent. Those schools definitely worked to identify musically gifted youth and advance their education. Schools often used scholarships funded by donors or benefits to help with the cost of tuition. So, for example, in 1937-38, the total value of scholarships offered by settlement music schools in New York City alone was $13,000. So that's about $300,000 now. And this was during the Great Depression, no less, when money was scarce. So this is part of a brochure from the Turtle Bay Music School. Reflecting on the progress of music schools in the mid-century, the National Guild of Community Music Schools stated, through these schools, instruction of the highest standard is made available to thousands of students, regardless of race, creed, or color, and is placed within the economic status of all. So I do not have time to go into all of the details of the curriculum and the methods of these schools, which were often based on a core curriculum recommendation from the National Guild. So I'm just going to offer a summary and sort of a quick trip through the schools in these next few slides. So this is the Brooklyn Music School. You can see some of the courses that they're offering. And schools had classes for the youngest, nursery and beginner level, all the way through advanced students, and some had adult classes as well. And you can see here, this is the Greenwich House Music School, and you can see like orchestration, composition, music workshop, ensemble. There's all kinds of different classes that people are invited to take. And beginner classes might include rhythm, movement, and basic instruments such as percussion and recorders. So the children are practicing their sort of body movement in order to learn music. And then on the other side, I'm pretty sure those boys are playing xylophone. I loved my xylophone back in the day. Very loud. Music theory classes included ear training, harmony, composition, and analysis. And group classes included musicianship, chorus, languages, sight reading, music appreciation, music history, and teacher training. These schools produced a lot of music teachers. And here's a couple of wonderful newspaper clippings showing the variety of activities and instruments that the children are engaged in at the Henry Street Music School in New York. And schools gave individual lessons in a variety of instruments, including piano, strings, woodwinds, and brass, as well as vocal training. And types of ensembles included junior, intermediate, and advanced band, orchestra, and chorus, woodwind, brass, string, and piano ensembles, opera performances and workshops, dance bands, jazz bands, and chamber music groups. And schools put on busy seasons of concerts and, of course, recitals. I love these. If anyone here ever did a recital, I can kind of relate to these children in these pictures. So the records in SWHA document the full schedule of events in settlement-based music schools and social music programs. And these might be informal singing at a club meeting or parties, or there might be full performances of operas and musicals and symphonies and new works. Other activities included benefit performances by professional musicians sometimes, extension programs that took place in public libraries and schools and in hospitals, music appreciation classes for the public, folk dancing, music therapy programs, radio broadcasts, festivals, and holiday parties, sometimes with celebrity musician guests. I have slides just of a few examples here. Opera was a very important part of the program. So on the right, an opera production of The Crucible based on Arthur Miller's play. That was at the Cleveland Music School Settlement. And the other two images are from the Henry Street Settlement Music School. I'm pretty sure the one in the center is one of their many productions of a Mozart opera. And then on the left-hand side, they're advertising their opera performance workshop. And there's also a rundown of the many productions that they've done in recent years of classical operas. And then this is just an example of different types of programs. So the May Day pageant had both a musical pantomime and an operetta and a dance. The Henry Street Settlement had a Mozart orchestra conducted by Robert Schultz that had a regular program of Mozart pieces. And then folk dancing, always a very popular activity. So you can see the social department right there in the middle with a photo of folks engaged in a folk dancing class. And this is the era of radio. So there were a lot of radio broadcasts. This wonderful photo of the very nervous children of the Henry Street Children's Chorus. It's a little hard to see, but there's a microphone right in front of them that says NBC. So I like to think that maybe they're in the newly constructed Rockefeller Center, right, singing their hearts out. And then for those of us who were in band or chorus back in the day, this brings back some memories. So everyone squeezed together on the stage, engaged in a performance. And these would all be either student or community member musicians affiliated with a particular community school. So community schools were also sites for modern music and dance and experimental methods. The National Guild prioritized making our music centers available as workshops and laboratories where new and important techniques and ideas might develop. And brochures and curricula and bulletins showed a variety of new methods being used. So for example, the Carl Orff method, incorporating play-based approach to music education, and the Suzuki method, which Louise Barrand brought directly to the Henry Street Settlement Music School from Japan, following her visit there as a representative of the National Guild to observe and study Suzuki in action. So she took it straight from his program to the music school. And Henry Street also became a center for modern dance education and performance through the innovations of dancers such as Lisa Parnova, Hans Feiner, Murray Lewis, Alwyn Nicholas, and Phyllis Lambert. And you can see here some advertisements for performances or newspaper coverage of modern dance performances at the Settlement House on the Lower East Side of New York. They also had a dance group called a motion choir, which I love that concept. And then just the fabulous photo of Lisa Parnova, who had come to the US after being a ballerina in Russia and then taught at the school. So aligned with this openness to new and experimental techniques, settlement houses were venues for new music, and particularly the involvement of young or amateur community performers in that music. So Henry Street had American premieres of works by Paul Hindemith, Kurt Weill, Gustav Holst, Aaron Copland, and others. So for example, Kurt Weill's Der Ja-Sager, He Who Says Yes, was performed in 1931 and 33. And reviews noted the difficulty of his work, described as vigorous and harmoniously interesting. I guess kind of a mixed review, they're harmoniously interesting. An article about the performance in 1933 stated, "We are looking more and more to the local music schools for performances of new and unfamiliar works of importance." So the settlements also hosted free or inexpensive community concerts, often outdoors, with a range of genres and performers. And these became popular community events. So this photo is of a concert series called Evenings by the River that was hosted by the Lower East Side Neighborhoods Association. And I also just love this sort of glimpse of old New York. This is the early 1960s here. And a great example of free community concerts and collaboration is Monday nights at the Plaza, held at the East Harlem Fountain Plaza in the 1960s. And shown here is an architect's drawing that also depicts the surrounding public housing buildings in the background. And the concerts were organized by the James Weldon Johnson House in collaboration with the public housing development, social service agencies, tenant organizations, and parent groups from the public schools. And the series was described as an everyman's Lincoln Center, which is an interesting reference to the Showcase Lincoln Center for the Performing Arts that had recently been constructed. So stats from 1962 show that attendance appears to be pretty good, averaging over 1,700. And the most popular concert that year was Babatunde Olatunji, a Nigerian musician and founder of the group Drums of Passion, who also worked with other well-known musicians of the time. And the concert drew 3,000 people, mostly teenagers. And it's not always easy to find the community's reactions to these events, but the report on this concert series describes audiences dancing, clapping, and singing. This is one of my favorites. Okay, so I call this the musical neighborhood flyer. It was made by the Union Settlement Music School, and it's a wonderful reflection of this idea of community development and artistic opportunity through music. And the entire neighborhood around the school and its various social, educational, and recreational services are depicted using musical terms. So, of course, we have Brass Band Boulevard, but there's Cultural Co-op in the background, Flutophone Lane. Does anybody remember flutophones? And Music by Mail Mall. But that's just a wonderful piece. There's a reason why these handmade flyers are some of my favorites. So in the last part of my talk, I'm going to explore some of the themes and topics uncovered while researching it. And a key theme is theories about the role of beauty and the arts in an urban environment. Music programs reflected ideas, particularly from earlier settlement house and social work theory, about cultivating beauty and instilling vitality for people and neighborhoods that were described in terms such as lifeless, dull, congested, and weary. And social workers were concerned with the impacts of an urban environment, long working hours in poor conditions, substandard and crowded housing, and what they called degrading surroundings. They believed that these negative effects were countered by the arts. And a quote from the study of music in 38 settlements also reflects this idea. To give color to drab lives, to enrich impoverished personalities, to open the doors of self-expression to thwarted and repressed people of all classes are the particular values which settlements cherish, and it noted that music is an important part of this work. Another theme is that, tied to that, is that music contributes to personal development as well as social development and the community. And also that there are many, many musical puns in newspaper clippings in these collections. So School of Music rings out sounder lives is one example. This is about the Detroit Music School. And then the Community Music School of San Francisco provides the key to better living for the two very dressed up young children who are exiting the school. And I love the one on the other side. Music was really viewed as providing a wholesome occupation for youth who might otherwise be playing in the street or causing trouble. And so these young men, rather than forming a gang or playing stickball or something out in the street, are studying music together. And then these are a little hard to read, so I'll summarize them for you a little bit. So the one on the left is the Creed of the Boston Music School Settlement. And it mentions the development of individual and social resources through music. And it notes the value of education in music as a strong defense against the degrading pleasures and interests which abound in congested districts of the city. That's a loaded sentence. And then beyond the dead end, I don't have time to read the entire thing. It's a fictional account of Peter Angelo, future tough guy and criminal, whose playground is, and I'm quoting here, the alleyway where lean cats prowl among the crowding ash cans, end quote, who is saved by attending the music school and basically becomes a citizen. And Music in 38 Settlements includes a chapter on values in music that notes the connection between a genuine appreciation of good music and the cultivation of fine character. And a book from 1923 titled Music Schools and Settlement Music Departments, one of the first on this method, notes that children who are musically gifted can get friendly sympathy and capable assistance in these schools, and warns that without such guidance, their lives would become futile and groping. Now, I could write an entire talk on what these and many similar statements reflect about the views of some, but not all, the social workers, right, on the parents and the communities that these children come from. And a Henry Street Settlement Music School Director's Report from the 1930s states that in a time like this present, music is a necessity, a public service, for it breeds discipline, alertness, tolerance, and a higher level of ideas. It is the social insurance. And that's a direct reference to the social programs of the New Deal that were being instituted at the same time during the Great Depression. And then another interesting thing is that music is democratic and that it fosters civic and democratic values. And an example of this idea was expressed at a 1916 meeting of music schools that describes music as the instrument of democracy, the art of the masses. And great impulse was given at the meeting to the object of our association, which is to standardize the musical instruction of native and foreign-born children of the wage-earning classes, and to use the influence of music for the development of a means for self-expression and good citizenship. They were not only concerned with citizenship, but they were very concerned with this idea that people were repressed, that they could not express themselves, and it would explode into negative behaviors. So a number of music schools describe music as a universal language that brought people together and fostered understanding. And a brochure from the music school settlement in Philadelphia noted that the students of the school represented 18 nationalities and that they were being fused in Americanization, that's a quote, so that 20,000 pupils who have been instructed at the settlement music school represent the alloy of American character in the making. Mm-hmm. And then there's a couple of, there's actually a surprising amount of music in the collection, but this sheet music is Good Neighbors Should Be Kind. So that kind of sums up the idea. Don't worry, I'm not going to make folks sight read from that. And then the chart on the right is talks about the country of origin of the fathers of the children who are students at the Henry Street Settlement. And they actually kept statistics from 1939 to the early 1960s of what countries did that our students come from. And in 1954, their director's report talked about building democracy via music and said, we tend to think of our country as already made and fixed. And yet in our school this season, there are 60 students born in foreign countries. Music is one of the best means for integrating old and new viewpoints. And then this slide is one last interesting example of this conscious connection between community music and democracy, and also civic virtues, right? It is a performance of a song based on the text of the Universal Declaration on Human Rights that was given in 1953, and it celebrates both democratic values, right, and the post-World War II international order. So in conclusion, I'm going to circle back to this dual purpose of music education and social music in community centers, as expressed by the Social Music Training School in 1926, when it said, any use of music in which the stress is not merely upon the music itself, but upon the lives of those participating, right? That is community music. And records in SWHA certainly show opportunities and community impacts of these music programs. And so I'll round out with this quote from the brochure of the Music School Settlement in Philadelphia that summarizes the goals and community nature of music in settlement houses. The whole functioning of the settlement music school is based on the principle of art as the means of attaining a full, satisfying personal life of broadest culture. It mainly conceives its purpose as that of community improvement by music, and its studios and auditorium, as well as the homes of the people, are its workshop. It believes in the capacity of the people for aesthetic improvement and thus maintains in its building a cultural atmosphere and reality of art, which makes for a rich personal and community life. And that way, according to its vision, lies good citizenship. And this talk was just an example of, just had a few examples of the resources related to community music in SWHA, which really is an untapped area for research in this archive. And there is a vibrant world of music, in addition to what I've shown you here today, waiting to be explored.
Okay, our second presentation is Sensational Stories from the Student Newspaper, and it will be presented by Katelyn Morken and Rebecca Toov, who are both archivists with the University of Minnesota Archives. Katelyn and Rebecca will share stories from the Ariel and the Minnesota Daily, which are also featured in the University of Minnesota Archives exhibit on the second and third floor. So,
my name is Rebecca Toov. I am the collections archivist for the University of Minnesota Archives. I use she, her pronouns. I have brown hair, am wearing glasses, and am standing in front of a lectern in room 120 of Elmer L. Andersen Library with a presentation screen behind me. Our presentation today will highlight sensational stories from the student newspapers of the University of Minnesota and the current Andersen Library exhibit, Beyond the Page. Let's start with touch. When I think of touch, tangible, tactile, physical, I think of the myriad ways in which publishing, preserving, and engaging with the independent student press at the University of Minnesota has evolved since its inception. To produce the first issue of Ariel, the first student newspaper at the university, published on December 1st, 1877, editors composed handwritten copy that was taken to a downtown Minneapolis printer, where it was typeset and printed on a press. Issues were bundled and delivered to campus, where Ariel staff distributed them by inserting individual copies into the post office boxes of subscribers in the main building. Ariel, which served the campus community as a monthly newspaper from 1877 to 1891, then as a weekly from 1891 to 1900, transitioned into the Minnesota Daily on May 1st, 1900. The first image on the screen depicts the main building, or Old Main, where the center of campus activity was located during this period, and where the Ariel and Daily offices were originally housed. Old Main was located on the Knoll area on the east bank of campus, where Shevlin Hall stands today. The first pages of the first issues of Ariel and the Minnesota Daily are also displayed. In the past 125 years, Daily staff have tapped out copy on typewriters, then computers, as depicted by these images of Daily staff from 1929 and 1988, respectively. Readers accessed physical issues from individual post office boxes from 1877 to 1951, and then from distribution boxes strategically located throughout campus until 2020. The image on the left of the screen depicts 3 students holding stacks of daily issues, filling post office box slots in Kaufman Memorial Union in 1941. The image on the right, from the October 9th, 1951 issue of the Daily, depicts 6 hands reaching into a daily distribution box with the caption, "Grab 'em," from the Daily's new distribution boxes as you enter or leave your favorite classroom building. Here, for the information of anyone who is still vainly looking for the daily in his Union post office box, is a list of buildings where daily boxes are located in the lobbies. Today, the daily is delivered as an e-newsletter, the Daily Breakdown, to the email inboxes of university students, staff, faculty, and other subscribers. The image on the left is a screenshot from my email inbox, depicting the text of the Daily Breakdown from September 19th, 2025, which I accessed from a click of the touchpad on my laptop. On the right of the screen is an image used to illustrate an article titled "The Evolution of the Minnesota Daily" from the Minnesota Alumni Magazine, published in April of 2023. The article describes the decision to end the physical print edition during the pandemic in 2020 and the embrace of online publishing and other digital platforms to disseminate the news. The QR code links to a digitized version of the magazine if you're interested in reading the article to learn more about that evolution. Though current readers of the Daily in its digital form don't have to deal with the nuisance of getting newsprint on their fingers, that is still very much a reality for the archivists charged with handling and preserving the historical volumes of the newspaper. To preserve the Ariel, we removed restrictive binding, organized each issue by volume, and rehoused the volumes into 4 flap enclosures. Bound volumes of the Ivory Tower, the magazine edition of the Daily, were disbound, interleaved, and inventoried. We're currently assessing and inventorying the over 100 volumes of physical issues of the Daily. The collage of images on the screen depict these examples. In 2021, with assistance from a library strategic digitization grant, 218 microfilm reels that contain images of daily issues from 1900 to 2009 were digitized. The images from the microfilm were converted to PDF files with machine-readable text that enables keyword searching. Over 17,000 individual issues were uploaded to the University Digital Conservancy. The collage of images on the screen depict the microfilm reel boxes, the metadata spreadsheet used to capture description of the digital files, and a page image of a PDF issue accessible in the UDC. While conducting research into the provenance or origin of the physical issues in the archival collection, we came across a letter sent by Edward Nicholson, Dean of Student Affairs, to Robert Guile, business manager of the Minnesota Daily, on January 20th, 1921. The letter addressed a request made by Ina Firkins, reference librarian in the University Library, for copies of the Daily. Nicholson informed Guile, quote, "I have come to the conclusion that it is proper and wise for the library to be furnished with a complete file of the Minnesota Daily without cost. It is to the interest of the Daily that there be a complete file available, and to this extent at least, the library is serving the Daily." The library continues to serve the Daily to this day. In August of 2025, Daily staff donated 52 boxes of records and 41 volumes of duplicate newspapers to university archives. This panoramic image of 5 flatbed carts lined up in a row containing stacks of boxes and bound volumes depicts the extent of the tangible, tactile, and physical processing work ahead of us. Hearing. A key element of the Daily's ability to maintain relevance to its readership included an embrace of emerging technology and the expansion of the means in which it amplified news to the university community. In 1934, Daily staff collaborated with university radio station WLB to produce a weekly news broadcast. This evolved into the program Campus Cast in 1936. An image of the cast standing in front of microphones holding scripts in the WLB studio is presented on the screen, alongside an advertisement published in the February 2nd, 1937 issue of the Daily to promote the broadcasts. The text states, "At 7 tonight, the Daily presents the Campus Cast, a review of the week's news dramatized for you by Minnesota students over WLB. Hear how Minnesota students mobilize for relief. The new traffic signal may be help or handicap. The University Theater brings Mexico to Minnesota," and late news flashes from the Daily. This collaboration between the two media organizations endured in many forms over the years. An editor's note on the right of the screen, titled "The Minnesota Daily Partners with Radio K to Combine Media," published in the April 25th, 2005 print issue, informed readers that, quote, "The campus radio station and campus newspaper have come together to offer the university community more ways of getting news and entertainment," end quote. Readers were instructed to visit the Daily website, where recordings of news broadcasts produced by the staff of Radio K, which is the successor of WLB, were featured. In 2018, the Daily launched the In the Know podcast, advertisements with the tagline, "Breaking Down the Used News," with a logo that featured a microphone with lightning bolts emanating from it, were published in the print edition to promote the audio program, as pictured on the left of the screen. In the spring of 2020, during the COVID-19 pandemic, the university was closed and a stay-at-home order was in effect statewide. Though it paused production for a short time to ensure the safety of its staff, the In the Know podcast resumed with new episodes in April. One of those episodes, published on April 16th, 2020, featured an interview with a university student deemed an essential worker who remained on campus to continue his job in the Pioneer Dining Hall to maintain food service for students still living on campus. In the deluge of rapidly changing news during this period, this description of the conditions on campus documents the perspectives of university students as they attempted to adapt during this period of uncertainty. Each podcast episode produced by the Daily is preserved by University Archives and the University Digital Conservancy. The screenshot on the right depicts the item record for the episode mentioned, and the QR code links to that record if you are interested in listening.
My name is Katelyn Morken. I am the Research Services and Student Life Archivist for the University of Minnesota Archives and use the pronouns she, her. I am wearing a maroon sweater, have blonde hair, and I'm standing at a lectern in room 120 of Elmer L. Andersen Library. We will be moving on to site. The Beyond the Page exhibit was first conceptualized in the fall of 2023 in anticipation of the upcoming 125th anniversary of the student newspaper. Our goal was to highlight the Daily's long-standing impact on the campus community while also promoting the use of their archival issues that the University Archives staff use with every day. Over the course of a year, Rebecca and I conducted extensive research and reviewed decades of the Daily's publication to better understand the paper's role, scope, and influence throughout the university's history. We then translated this work into a panel exhibit that is featured on the second and third floor of Andersen Library. With the expertise of our exhibit designer, Darren Terpstra, we were able to bring this history vividly to life. The exhibit highlights key moments that capture major events across different eras and illustrates how the daily staff remained relevant to their readers, demonstrated resilience during challenging times, and continually found ways to go beyond the page. So through the process of preparing this exhibit, we examined the daily's history through the development of its front cover design. Each visual choice made by student staff served a deliberate purpose, most often to capture a reader's attention and to convey the tone of that moment in campus life. On the screen are several covers from the Ivory Tower, the magazine supplement produced and supported by the Minnesota Daily from 1952 to 1969. It was originally implemented as a substitute for the Monday issue of the Daily and transitioned into a monthly publication by 1962. The 4 covers displayed here illustrate the varying degree of visual art and design from the 1950s through the 1960s. One cover on the far left features a cartographic watermark of the University of Minnesota campus overlaid with a cartoon of a freshman student puzzling over a directional sign, pointing towards Falwell Hall, the physics building, the armory, the student union, and Ford Hall. Another presents a bright green background with a vibrant psychedelic pink elephant. A third includes an arrangement of green snowflakes accompanied by the Ralph Waldo Emerson quote, "The frolic architecture of snow." And the final cover depicts a clown's hand holding a cluster of balloons, 1 spotted, 2 white, 2 black, and 3 orange, 2 of which contain text identifying the edition of the Ivory Tower as the spring fashion issue, a guide to pleasure in fashion. Additional Ivory Tower covers, including the ones highlighted here, can be found on the end caps of the 2nd and 3rd floor hallways of the exhibit space. Moving into the 1960s and the 1970s, the Daily expanded its creative approach by incorporating photojournalism. One notable example comes from the May 11th, 1972 issue, which reported on the anti-war demonstrations that took place on campus the previous day, May 10th. The issue displayed on the left features 3 panoramic photographs capturing the police presence on campus, including an altercation involving a student. The editor's decision to rely solely on these images, paired only with the headline, "Police Battle Students on Campus," was intentional. This minimal text approach distinguished the issue from others of the period and allowed the photographs to serve as the central narrative. Within the pages of this issue is a timeline, the demonstration events, accompanied by photographs that visually reinforce the narrative, including the 2 images shown to the right of the cover. The top image depicts students barricading I-94 with a stalled car prominently positioned in the foreground with students surrounding it. The bottom image shows a group of students gathered along the edge of a campus building roof, observing the demonstrations below. This use of photojournalism by Daily reflects a continued commitment to documenting current events and amplifying key stories, particularly through the expanded use of photograph collages on the front covers or double page spreads. The final example of the Daily's use of visual elements appears in the evolution of its masthead. Shown here are 5, though not all, of the masthead versions used over time, illustrating variations in topography and display, while some feature intricate designs and others craft for bold visual impact. Certain styles appeared only briefly, while others endured for decades. Within the exhibit, the mastheads serve both as visual markers, distinguishing the panels, and as representations of their respective time periods. Their transformation becomes apparent as visitors move through the exhibit space, offering a clear visual progression of the Daily's design history. Every issue of the Minnesota Daily serves up a taste of its era. Some stories are a snack, while others serve up a full-course meal of campus history. Each issue dishes out a bite of the past, but at the height of the Vietnam War, the paper served up an especially tasty story as the university entered a new decade. In the spring of 1970, while students protested the escalating conflict in Southeast Asia, They also mobilized against the national fast food chain Red Barn Incorporated. Having rapidly expanded across the Twin Cities, Red Barn set its sights on the Dinkytown location, one that required demolishing a historic section of the neighborhood. On April 1st, 1970, students, local residents, members of the university community occupied the construction site to halt the demolition. And after a month-long standoff, demonstrators were arrested and removed on May 6th, and the site was subsequently cleared. Daily reporters and photographers were on the scene that morning to document the confrontation between demonstrators and the Minneapolis police. Just hours later, the Daily released the Barn Bust Extra Edition, a 4-page issue serving up first-hand accounts, detailed reporting on the raid, and extensive photographic coverage. While one cannot literally taste a story published by the Daily, in this case, readers certainly savored every bite of this community news. So satisfying was the coverage that the Daily released the Barn Bust Chapter 2 edition on May 8, 1970, offering additional reporting on the ongoing protest against the national food chain at that time. Despite the controversy that they sparked on campus, Red Barn advertised widely in the Daily. One ironically even included the tagline, "Make Red Barn Restaurant an on-campus must," from 1967. Similarly, other local restaurants, campus cafes, and coffee shops consistently used the Daily to reach students over decades. Espresso Royale Cafe, for example, captured readers' attention with the phrase, "Smell the coffee," alongside a 2-for-1 coupon for use during its extended late-night hours. Schlotzsky's relied on the simple promise that one sandwich was all it took to know it's that good. These advertisements demonstrate how the Daily has long served as a platform connecting campus life with local businesses. Throughout its history, the Daily has had a remarkable knack for sniffing out the scoop, whether a breaking news report or a notable campus feature. As expressed in the March 1st, 1927 editorial titled "Smells That Cry to Heaven," the editors wrote, "For who would write about stink when such a pleasant subject as perfume might be suggested? Not one, I am sure. But these distasteful things must be done. Now to get to the bottom of this smelly matter." In this editorial, the Daily acknowledges that while no one enjoys reporting on unpleasant issues, confronting them is essential in order to uncover the truth and correct what needs fixing. Time and time again, the paper has demonstrated this commitment, shaping campaigns and forging pathways responsive to the needs of students and the broader campus community. One notable example emerged in the years following World War II. With enrollment surging, the University of Minnesota lacked adequate housing for returning veterans and their families. Between 1945 and 1949, the Daily repeatedly brought attention to this crisis, using its platform to press the administration for action. Their resistance proved effective, and the university acquired land on Como Avenue and opened University Village in 1945. And 3 years later, secured University Grove for additional housing in 1948. Quonset huts and prefabricated homes were constructed in these areas, providing much-needed living spaces for student veterans and their families.
The Daily also drew awareness to other smelly matters through the use of illustrations and editorial cartoons. On the front page of the March 3rd, 1927 issue, printed alongside a series of articles that document opposition to an anti-evolution bill introduced in the state legislature that would have prohibited the teaching of evolution in state educational institutions, was a drawing titled "Padlocked" that depicts the bill as a lock on the institution. A woman wearing a headband with the word "truth" written across it holds a book titled "Science, Free Thought," and stands outside the entrance, barred from entering. On October 12, 1937, a front page cartoon depicts students sitting in a vehicle outside of Memorial Stadium holding a telescope. The text, "We gotta have one this big. We're sitting in the student section," addressed the growing agitation over lack of seating for football games. Coverage of this issue led to an inquiry that resulted in university administrators enacting ticketing policy reforms to create better seating options for students. In some instances, the Daily was the creator of odious content. In June of 1979, a satirical finals week edition that contained articles on topics of race and religion instigated public outcry. Though the Daily issued an editorial apology, controversy ensued. Hearings were held at the state legislature, and the Board of Regents acted to make the portion of the student service fee allocated to the Daily refundable for any student that did not want to pay to support it. Throughout this period, the Daily had to cover itself. The article clipping "Daily Wins First Amendment Appeal" from the October 12, 1983 issue, pictured on the left of the screen, reported the outcome of a lawsuit filed in 1980 by the Board of Student Publications and editor Kate Stanley against the Board of Regents and President C. Peter McGraw, alleging that their action violated the Daily's First and 14th Amendment rights. A petition by the Regents to overturn the decision in 1983 was rejected by an appeals court, and university attorneys negotiated an out-of-court settlement that included payment of over $182,000 to the Daily for legal expenses and the establishment of a fund to support educational programs on the First Amendment. Throughout the exhibit, we feature clippings of editorials, articles, and illustrations scanned directly from the pages of the newspaper to emulate how you might interact with and access the newspaper in the archives, and to allow the words of the editors and the reporters to tell the story. In 1999, Kate Stanley, the editor who navigated that legal battle resulting from the 1979 Finals Week issue, was interviewed by university historian Anne Flum. Stanley is pictured on the screen, along with the item record from the University Digital Conservancy, which provides access to the interview transcript. The QR code provides a link to that record. In the interview, Stanley reflected on the value of the independent student press and provided a fitting conclusion for the exhibit. Quote, "If you look at the Daily over time, what you see is a phenomenal journalistic product put out on the streets every day by 19 and 20 and 21-year-olds. How are they able to do it? They do it because they must, and because they're expected to do it, and because no one has told them they can't. The Daily has a long history of exposing wrongdoing at the university, of highlighting tremendous successes and bringing them to the fore, of challenging the administration in its times of folly, of promoting innovations that have enhanced the university's reputation. It is journalism at its very best." End quote. Stanley's sentiment evokes a sense of spirit, a sense of purpose, and a connectedness to something greater than oneself. This sense of spirit has been part of the rhetoric utilized by editors of the Ariel and the Daily throughout its history. In 1917, subscribers to the Daily were issued "I have subscribed" buttons with a card that read, "Here's your button. It shows that you have subscribed to the Daily. It proves that you have done your share to keep campus spirit alive. But there aren't enough like you. We must have more. We want you to work with us. Wear your button." We invite you to subscribe to the ongoing preservation of the spirit of the University of Minnesota through the pages of the Independent Student Press and beyond. Following the presentation, we invite you to view the exhibit, to engage with an essential source of university history in hopes of inspiring curiosity, evoking memory, and encouraging reflection upon the university experience, past, present, and future. The exhibit begins on the 3rd floor in this building, and Katelyn and I will join you on the 2nd floor at the conclusion of the exhibit, where we can answer any questions that you may have. We also have replica souvenir buttons if you would like one. We look forward to engaging in conversation with you. Thank you.
So we're right at 1 o'clock, so I'm afraid we can't do Q&A today. Thank you so much to Linnea, Rebecca, and Katelyn for such wonderful talks. If you'd like to talk to them afterwards, they'll be available. We have a lot going on in our building at the moment. Beyond the Page is on the 2nd and 3rd floors, as Katelyn and Rebecca just said. We hope you'll go up and look at those exhibits. It's awesome. Just across the hallway here is, let's see, it's called The Circle Unbroken, celebrating 40 years of community stewardship and the Gibbons collection. That's just across the hallway here on the 1st floor. And then downstairs in the Wallen Center, we have The Resonating Power of Music in the Pre-Modern World, now with music as part of it. And then in the Bell Room, which is just through the gallery, there's Honey for Dancing, Khoisan Music in the Pre-Modern World, which is a poster exhibit there. Let's see, if you're interested in a tour of the caverns, meet with Kate in the back. And then thank you so much for attending. We hope you'll join us again on February 6th, so no First Fridays in January, but February 6th, we'll have presentations from the Tretter Collection and GLBT Studies, and also the James Ford Bell Library and Special Collections and Rare Books. Thank you so much.